Welcome to Momentum, a motorsports podcast powered by High Gear Success. I'm your host, Heather Wilson-Schultz. Here we share the stories and strategies that keep the world of motorsports moving forward. And joining me now is James Wright and Trevor Schoonover, co-host of Tallboys Trackmasters Podcast, as well as members of Fairmont Dual Sport Riders in West Virginia. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So my podcast listeners know West Virginia is one of my favorite places to go adventure riding, to go camping. It's beautiful there. It's not that far from me. A couple years ago, James and I actually got to do some adventure riding together with a group that we know in West Virginia. Unfortunately, during that time, though, Trevor was out of commission with dual broken wrist. So we did not get to catch up.
Yeah, so I missed that due to some pretty gnarly injuries. Broke both my wrists due to flattening my front tire, and was on loose gravel, so I didn't think anything of it, and went to go to the next turn, and the flat tire folded up under the rim. I think I high-sided, and then I knew I broke one because when I got up it was visibly wrong, and then got some more x-rays at the ER, and they told me that they were both broken. So that was an interesting time.
Several months of challenges, I would assume.
Yeah, I had to get a plate on my right side, and I'm a year and a half out, I think, from that. I really don't have complications aside from a little bit reduced range of motion, but the recovery was pretty rough.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be pretty gnarly to kind of have both of your hands out of commission. You could probably use your fingers a little bit, but not very much. So
he was full-time ref in our football games for a long time. He had both hands.
Yeah. What made it worse was that was going to be the last ride before I got married. Got married in September of that year. It did end up being the last ride. And I got out of cast like a week and a half, I think, before the ceremony. So had to go get my suit jacket, final fitted because my casts were too big to go through the armholes. And interesting time. Did
you tell yourself either like in your head or out loud that it was going to be your last ride before you went?
I don't know if I really vocalized it or anything, but like I just decided like I'm not going to ride, within this period leading up to the wedding.
James, I don't know if your family was like this growing up, but we were never allowed to say one more lap or we're going out for the last ride because that's when bad stuff happens. So even if you think it's going to be your last lap, you're going to say, I'm going to go out for two more, and then you only did one. So I don't know if that karma was like catching up with Trevor there.
Yeah, karma's a you-know-what, and anytime you mention that or vocalize it, it's going to put you on the ground immediately.
So you just published your 100th episode of Tallboys Trackmasters. How does it feel to have 100 episodes under your belts?
It's kind of a relief in a way. I know whenever we got to like around episode 82, 83, just felt like we were constantly doing things and we weren't getting any closer to episode 100. But no, it's been cool, and it was really interesting to do it at Adventure Travel Day to break that century mark.
So Adventure Travel Day was at the West Virginia State Capitol just a few weeks ago. What kind of goes on at that event?
Yeah, so Adventure Travel Day, and they kind of combined it with Motorsports Day too, so to be a little bit more inclusive. But that entire thing was started by Senator Mark Maynard, who's from Wayne, West Virginia. He's a avid outdoorsman and motorsports enthusiast. And a couple friends of ours, Jerry Bain, Eric Larch, and some others, Jed Smith. And it's just a way to showcase adventure travel and tourism to our legislators in the state capitol. I don't think that they realize just how big that this sport is, especially in the state of West Virginia. So it was a chance for businesses and, people, different clubs, different tourism agencies and whatnot to get together, showcase that there's all these voices are here in the state. All this money is being brought into the state of West Virginia. Tourism is one of the big drivers of the economy in the state of West Virginia now, with all the dying industries such as coal and steel and oil and gas kind of having their boom coming and going. But yeah, just a way to say that our voices matter, and get in the state capitol and network, all that sort of fun stuff. So
it's definitely a great opportunity to network.
I did watch your guys' live stream from that event, and I had a good laugh when you posted that for the first time in West Virginia's existence. They said Tallboys and Trackmasters on the Senate floor, I think it was.
Yeah, it was really funny. Our old representative was Mike DeVault. He's a really good friend of ours and a supporter of Fairmont Dual Sport Riders. But he kind of stepped down here recently, and our new representative, which was Garcia, I think, they kind of introduced all the people that were there for Adventure Travel Day in the Senate gallery. We were up in the peanuts above all the stage down below. But yeah, it was really funny to hear, and introducing from my district in Fairmont, West Virginia, Tallboys and Trackmasters. It was just fun to hear that on a prestigious Senate floor like that.
Yeah, I love that. So out of all the episodes that you guys have done, do you have a favorite episode or a favorite topic that you guys have covered?
Well, we do interviews, we do, kind of in the weeds analytics and statistics on different bikes and different disciplines and whatnot. But I would say at least one of my favorite interviews was a guy that I've watched on YouTube for many years, Wayne Dowsett from Australia. So it was really cool to get his perspective of what adventure and dual sport riding's like clear over there in that continent. But it was really interesting to try to get our time schedules mixed or put together, because I think he's like 13 or 14 hours ahead of us. But just a first international guest and having somebody that, speaks our language but doesn't at the same time. There was a lot of back and forth there. And it was just really cool to figure out that, he's just a down-to-earth guy that was cool to come on our show. So I think that was one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, going down and, riding with him and his crew would be a definite bucket list ride.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your favorite, Trevor?
Probably Wayne. I mean, just for the accent and the stories alone, it was great. It was really memorable.
Do you guys look back at your early episodes and go, oh my gosh? Because I feel like I definitely do that with my work from like a couple years ago. Like, oh man, that was kind of gnarly.
I definitely do. I've been going back. We just recently started putting everything on Spotify as well. So going back and seeing those first, 10 to 15 episodes, you're like, you guys are so over your head. You have no idea what you're talking about. And this production is terrible quality, like just those things. But, it's definitely grown into a full-time production, and, the content has definitely improved. But yeah, looking back on that, it's like, you don't know how to talk to people correctly. You don't know how to interview. Like, there's a lot of things that I criticize myself for.
Well, I still don't. But what we lacked in production, we made up for in the freshness of the ideas, because we were doing, the tech episodes and whatnot that were the first time that we'd done them. Versus we've gotten to a point you can only talk about the technical side of riding, like bike setup, gear, tires, etc., so many times before it gets stale. So
yeah, and in your early episodes, you didn't have very many guests, if I recall. It was really just you guys. And
Yep.
I find that has to be even more challenging as a podcaster to come up with topics and then keep the conversation going between you versus interviewing somebody new every single week. You kind of have a different topic in mind.
Well, we at least lucked out in the sense that from an industry standpoint, there's been a lot going on, especially like middleweight adventure bike segments. So there was always, something to discuss about, who's releasing what bike, what are the pros and cons, what is the application for this bike, that bike, etc. But point that we interview more and more interesting people has really helped.
Yeah, and it's always, I've said this on other shows and stuff as well. Trevor's one of the few people that I'm friends with that I can kind of have that higher level of conversation and get into the weeds about things. So, those early episodes really were just a way for us to kick the wintertime blues. We only streamed to the Fairmont Dual Sport Rider group, so it was pretty inclusive, and we know that was our core audience. And then we decided to kind of branch out to everybody else. But yeah, it's there's always something to talk about, and if not, man, we can pull some stuff out of our rears to kill an hour.
Yeah, which we've had to do on several occasions. So it's worked out.
Tell us how you both got started in riding and the different bikes that you guys have enjoyed through the years or have currently.
Well, this is going to be a long-winded answer, but I started out riding when I was 6 years old. My dad had done some riding and racing growing up. When he got married and had me and my sister, he kind of put the bike away and sold it and didn't do anything for a good while. But no, it was one of those things where a lot of my friends in school were riding. Where I grew up in Barrackville, West Virginia, there was an old coal slag dump behind the town, and that's where you could go and ride and do anything you wanted to. So that's what all my friends were doing. That's what I wanted to do as well. So started out on my neighbor's little Z50 Honda. My dad kind of quickly nixed that. He said, if you're going to ride, you're going to learn to do it with a clutch. So he brought home a 1975 Suzuki TS75 that was blown up. So we did top end on that, learn how to work on my own bike from a really young age. And then it just really snowballed from there. My friends started racing. I started racing. My dad, used me riding and getting away from where he could see me as an excuse for him to get back into it and start racing and riding. And my sister had enough of sitting around and watching us had a good time, so she got into it as well. And then my mother, at 35 years old, decided she wanted to start racing and riding as well. So it was a family affair from the beginning, and it's been ingrained in my DNA since I was young.
So I rode a little bit as a kid. I think it was a YZ80, and I tore my ankle up, and that was, at the end of that. So I got out of college, got my first real job, got my own health insurance, got a bike, and explored around Fairmont solo for, I don't know, probably close to a year. Ended up getting a Kawasaki KLX 250, and the day after I bought it, I was going to meet my then girlfriend, now wife, for coffee. Rode past James and some guys from FDSR at Hardee's and stopped in, was just asking like, hey, do you guys know any other trails or anything around here? And ended up canceling my coffee date and riding to Canaan with them. So that's how I came to know James and FDSR. And from that point, I've just been kind of bit by the bug. So that would have been, I think, 2019. I've since moved on to a KTM 350 XCF, which is my favorite bike that I've had. I still have my Kawasaki. That's actually the one that I was on when I broke both my wrists. So
I think it's cool that you stopped in and just like randomly asked strangers like, hey, where can I go ride? Because I don't think a lot of people would have the nerve to do that.
Yeah, I was getting tired of riding the same stuff and was getting desperate for finding new stuff. And, I sometimes think like if I hadn't stopped and talked to them, chances of me ever having fallen in with them was, kind of slim. And I probably would have gotten bored with it, really, because you can only ride the same stuff so many times before before it gets stale. And, like I said, I'm really glad that I did stop and talk to him, because it's been, a lot of friendships. It's been led to a lot of experiences, and dual sport riding's probably turned into, is definitely one of my top 3 hobbies.
It's fate, right? It's fate. Like,
I mean,
we wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the podcast. I wouldn't have a really good friend in my life. And like you said, it is kind of one of those disciplines of motorcycling that it's really inclusive. And that's one of my favorite parts about it is, there's no shame in stopping and talking to new people. And maybe you don't get that at a racetrack or something. But yeah, just being able to stop and see like-minded people and not be shunned or turned away due to your skill level or what you're riding is probably one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, it's always been really receptive. Like anytime I've tried to stop and talk to somebody that I've bumped into on a trail or see on the side of the road, everybody just seems eager to share like their little loops that they know, or like lesser known roads and stuff like that. So that's been a really good aspect of this hobby.
How did Fairmont Dual Sport Riders, also known as FDSR, come to be?
So Fairmont Dual Sport Riders was started by Nick Hall here in Fairmont. And it was really just a loose Facebook group, just posting up a time to go ride and meet up and whatnot. I kind of came into the fray through my dad. He had kind of given up racing and started doing the dual sport thing. And I kind of had that in the back of my mind that that's what people that can't race or hack it on the track anymore do, is the dual sport and adventure thing. So I wasn't really interested in it, but he convinced me to go one day. I went out and was pretty disappointed that I didn't start that earlier in my life. And just kind of, he knew some of the guys in FDSR, Nick and Mike Schleicher, Justin Potosny, and a bunch of the other boys. So I kind of got, into that fray. And then it was really funny because most of those guys were guys that I had raced hare scramble races against back whenever I was in my racing career. So there was some familiarity there. And they were definitely more on the hardcore side of dual sport riding, which is basically just enduro riding with a license plate at this point. But that really, piqued my interest as far as what I like to ride. And then, just kind of grew and grew and grew. I came on as vice president in 2020 and kind of took my background of being doing some event organization. I was the northern chairman of the West Virginia Jeep Club for several years. So I kind of had that past experience of running a big organization, a big group, and kind of brought FDSR to the forefront with that. So it started out as a loose Facebook group, and now it's the biggest dual sport and adventure riding motorcycle club in the state of West Virginia.
What are some of the events that the club hosts?
Every single year, our big one that we do, it's the third weekend in July, is the 304 Detour Dual Sport and Adventure Rally. It's a 2-day event based out of Fairmont, West Virginia. Saturday is what we call our hard or enduro loop for the nut jobs like us that like to ride the really challenging stuff. And then Sunday's what we call the adventure or easy loop. And it's more inclusive for beginner people to get out, still hit some trails, but see some really, really cool areas in the state of West Virginia. We are absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to trails in our area. West Virginia is such a hidden gem on the East Coast of the United States as far as riding is concerned. And we have a lot of really awesome landowners who are club members as well that allow us to come onto their property and ride during that event. And I think that's one thing that kind of sets us apart from a lot of different places is all these trails on Saturday's hard loop that you can only run them one time of the year, and that's during our event. So it's all virgin, really fun stuff that we like to run. We do a Memorial Day ride every single year. That's kind of a free, just show up and we'll figure out as we go type of thing. I usually have a route in my head that I want to run everybody on, but we do the Memorial Day ride. We do that. We do some fundraiser stuff, Toys for Tot drives and stuff during Christmas and whatnot. But the Memorial Day ride and the 304 Detour are definitely our big draws of the year.
Trevor, I don't know if you felt this way about James when you first met him, but James and I had a mutual friend that had invited me down to go for a ride. And I was probably most nervous about riding with James, to be honest, because I had seen his social media and seen the type of stuff that he likes, that hard, challenging, like balls to the wall, crazy stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so over my head. I was like so nervous, but Brian Holmes was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll choose the route. It'll be all good. And it was a very enjoyable experience. But if James had been leading, I'm not sure that I would have had that same relaxed experience.
I had no idea what to expect because it was me and a group of guys that were complete strangers, and I'm going to ride over to Canaan, which I was familiar with Canaan. Like James, I used to be big into Jeeps. Of course, still am. But I had no idea what I was getting into, no idea what to expect. And honestly, I'm glad that I went into it not knowing anything at all, because otherwise I would have been, really second guessing myself as to what we were getting into. And then as we rode together a little more, I came to realize that, there's different definitions of dual sport riding. So there's, the easier side of it, which is more like fire roads, kind of like more like ADV type stuff, just not quite as much mileage. And then there's what James and most of these other guys want to do, which is effectively enduro riding with a license plate, which is what ultimately led me to get a my KTM 350 and something that's a lot more friendly for like the hard enduro side of stuff. And I probably wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, by this point, I would have gotten bored with fire roads. Not that I don't enjoy them, but I really like the challenge of the harder aspects of dual sport riding.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with the type of riding that you guys like to do. It's just not what I usually like to do. So I was kind of nervous about it, but it's cool when you can find a group and have a good, enjoyable ride, and then also, like you said, Trevor, sometimes it's best not to know what you're getting into because maybe you wouldn't try stuff, but at the same time, it's also good to be a little prepared.
Yeah, that's like anytime that we're going to travel somewhere we haven't been and ride new trails. This is going to sound bad, I don't look at maps. I don't try to find any videos of people who have previously ridden it. Like Red River that we went to last year was a great example. I didn't look at anything for it. I just went into it blind, more or less, and I don't know. It's more enjoyable for me to do it that way, because then I'm not like, oh man, I know around this corner is, this hill climb that's, really messed a lot of people up in the past or anything like that. So the less I can second guess myself and the less I can expect, the better I tend to ride.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're masochists. We may be in a way. We like that type of riding. But it definitely sometimes can be a crucible to weed out those that aren't like-minded as us. And it is funny because it's like the more people that we bring in and ride with us in our group, it seems like you may have 5 new guys that come out and ride with us. Well, 3 of them are going to really enjoy what we like to do. So those guys just keep continuing to come back. And it's pretty evident quickly to see who didn't enjoy those type of rides because they don't come and ride with us anymore. But those core group of guys that like doing what we do, I wouldn't want to ride with anybody else. Whenever we're planning these trips or these events that we like to go to, we know that everybody's a pretty similar skill level and we are all going to mesh so well, our personalities especially. So that's definitely my type of people that I like to ride with is those types.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're both involved with, trail layout and trail maintenance for FDSR. So what are some of the things that you've learned throughout the years that make it a little bit easier?
Don't try to please everyone. If you try to go into a ride, a route that you're putting together that, your main goal is to make sure that 100% of the people enjoy it, you're not going to serve yourself well. It's going to be an injustice to everyone else. But I think that was the hardest part for me, was trying to set up something that most people like. You'll be more successful that way. And, take criticism well, take some feedback and do what you can with that. But, there's so much that goes into it, especially like we did in 2020, which was our first year of doing the 304 Detour, that you take away and learn, just like we did with the podcast. You look back at those first episodes, you're like, oh, that's terrible. I can look back at the first couple of years of our events that we were doing and say the same thing. It's just learning through growth. And then, we pretty well got a good idea of, what we can physically go through with the majority of our people that come to our rides, what kind of trails we need to add or take away, give or take. But, just a little bit of everything and just learning from growth.
Well, and isn't it crazy too, when we say 2020, it seems like that was just yesterday, but now it's 2026. Like that's getting to be pretty distant.
Yeah,
that's just crazy
don't remind
to me when
me.
we bring up that era.
It is crazy to look back on that though and think that, going into this year is our 7th year of doing the 304 Detour. There's plenty of burnout sometimes with it, but it still gets me excited to know that that's coming up, and my mind never stops. I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADHD when it comes to dual sports and ADV. But, I've always got my mind going with routes and different, GPX files, or where can we go? Where's this road go? I've always been that type of person. So I really do enjoy the route layout. Yeah.
So, we're talking about looking back to like our first couple events or our first couple podcasts. I think it's a great lesson in you don't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start. And the longer you wait to start, the more of a disservice you're doing to yourself, because you're going to miss out on, X periods of growth the longer you wait. One of the things that we've talked about on our show in the past is, a lot of people obsess over like the perfect bike to do X, Y, Z, when really what you should be doing is just taking the bike that you have in your garage and getting out there and, having your own adventure. That's really what it's about for me. I've had as much fun on, my KTM as I have on a 6 horsepower Trail 90 I took across Canaan Loop at one point. So, I mean, for me, as long as I'm out on 2 wheels, I'm having a good time. And I think a lot of people spend too much time waiting for the right conditions to get started.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer of you have to try something like 3 times or 3 years, especially when it comes to like event organizing. You're not going to do it perfect or well, even maybe on your first couple years. You're not going to have a sellout event more than likely in year 1. So you have to keep doing it. And now after several years, if things still aren't going well, maybe you need to really reevaluate and take a look at things. But generally a few years, a few tries, like things get worked out.
That's definitely our experience, at least with the Detour, because, it all started, me and another key guy in FDSR, Fred Miller, who actually did get to come and ride with us. We went to the Shenandoah 500, which was our first like organized dual sport event that we ever attended. And we just absolutely loved the vibe, the camaraderie that was surrounding it. And we were like, we can totally do this here in the state of West Virginia. And at that point, the only other dual sport and adventure event in the state was the Stolen Pig Rally put on by Don and Kathy McCoy in the southern part of the state. Well, Don had a pretty bad heart attack and had some medical issues, and they quit doing the event. So we were like, there's a void to fill here. We can do a dual sport event in our area, showcase, all the fun stuff that we have here in North Central West Virginia to ride. So 2020 comes along. We have it set in stone that we're going to do it at the local 4-H camp. Deposits are paid, flyers made, the word's out, and we get some pretty good feedback that we're going to sell out. And lo and behold, the COVID epidemic happens, right? So shuts it down. You weren't allowed to have, at least here in the state of West Virginia, you weren't allowed to have gatherings of more than 15 people at one point. So we're like, yep. All right, well, that's a sign from the good Lord to not pursue this. Don't do this. Well, they started relaxing some of those COVID restrictions to the point where you're allowed to have outdoor gatherings of 100 people. And, our thought process was, what better way to social distance than behind a set of handlebars and behind a helmet? So we actually got a phone call back from the 4-H camp that we rented saying, hey, you guys are allowed to have your event. If you want to, we can do it, this weekend, which happened to be the 3rd weekend in July. So we decided to go ahead with it. We already had pretty much all the pieces in place from a logistics standpoint to pull it off. And, a lot of other dual sport and adventure riding events canceled in 2020. So people were looking for something to do, and they all swarmed our event, and we were completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, we were overwhelmed. That was really something.
It wasn't fun. It was oh God, let's just get through this day.
It was a, survive type scenario.
So it comes and goes. Everybody has a good time. No, I don't think anybody really got hurt, and everyone enjoyed it. And they're like, when are we doing this next year? Like, all right, 3rd weekend in July, let's do it again. So, 2021, we decided to go all out. We rented the fairgrounds outside of Reesville, West Virginia, which is a really nice facility, full hookups, plenty of room for toy haulers, campers, everything. A little bit closer to some of our harder trails. We're going to do a 2-day event now. You're going to have a hard loop on both days and an easy loop on both days. We had a band, we had fireworks, just, food vendors, you name it. We had it there. And 41 people showed up for the entire weekend. So that was a huge bust. It was a really big blow to the ego in a way. And I remember at one point, there's a local Doobie Brothers cover band here, Almost Brothers Band. And they're really awesome. They really are. But they're on stage playing for 6 people in the bleachers. I'm like, what in the hell are we doing here? This is not very successful. And we were going to kind of pack it in.
I also wanted to dig into trail etiquette for dual sports and such. So what are your guys' advice or I don't know. I feel like sometimes people have been riding dual sports a long time and still don't have etiquette. For like new riders getting into it too, like what are some of the unspoken rules of trail riding?
I would say, it's really dependent on where you're coming from. Are you somebody like Trevor that's rode a little bit but never did any kind of racing or anything like that? So you're fairly new. If you're that type of person, I would say to don't get in over your head, obviously. If you're with a group of idiots like us and we're hitting all this hardcore stuff and you're not comfortable, just bow out. There's no shame in that. Don't ride above your skill level. And then on the other side of that, if you're an idiot like me, be more inclusive to the new guys. Don't try to run everybody away just because they're slowing you down as a group. And just, keep an open mind. We come from all walks of life and you never know what people have going on in their background, in their life personally. So try to be more inclusive if you're one of those harder core guys. And I mean, simply just don't be a dick.
Yeah. I mean, this is a hobby where you're ultimately out there to have fun. And anytime I stop having fun while I'm riding, I'm like, what am I even doing this for? But some pieces of trail etiquette for me, as somebody who's had to, make it up as I went along, is don't be the guy that shows up with a bike that has a lot of overdue maintenance. Don't be the guy that shows up with no trail tools. That's one of my big things, is having an adequate trail tool kit. A big thing for me is if somebody needs help, stop and help them. Whether it be picking their bike up, helping to, fix their bike, something like that. On the other side of the coin, be the guy who always expects somebody else to help them or fix their bike. There's a balance to be struck. There's been some instances where like guys will drop their bike and they'll just turn around and look at you. It's like, just at least put forth 50% of the effort. I'll come do the other 50% if I can, but at least make an effort. But yeah, James made a really good point about, trying not to get guys in over their heads purposefully. Sometimes it just happens.
For me too, sometimes the pace of a dual sport, people have very different speeds and paces that they want to ride. And I'm always happy to pull over and let somebody go around. I do not try to be a roadblock in the middle of the trail. I know I'm not the fastest, also not the slowest, but I'm also not the fastest. And so for me, it's just like, just give me a minute. When there is space for me to pull over and let you around, I will definitely let you around. But if we're on really tight single track and there's literally nowhere for me to go, like, you're going to need to be a little bit patient until we get to a little more open space.
Yeah, behind you honking the horn. Get out of the way. Come on now.
Well, and I don't know if you guys, I've heard different preferences on this too, so I don't think there really is a rule for this as to which side of the trail to pull over to. I always just kind of follow like traffic rules. I tend to always try to pull over to the right, but I've heard different people say different things too.
I would say, at least in my eyes, it's situational. So are you in an area where obviously there's a place on the right-hand side to get off and get away from everyone, do it there. Same thing if you're on the left-hand side. If there's a row of trees and a little trail you see that kind of goes off the main, comes back, go on the left side. But just do it where it's safe and where you're not going to injure yourself or take out the guy that's breathing down your neck.
Yeah, so a lot of guys that we ride with have experience with racing. You're used to having somebody behind you. Doesn't really bother you. For some reason, for me, I hate having somebody behind me that I know is a faster and more capable rider. So like for my own mental sake, I try to pull off and let them by. So I spend a lot of time in the back. My take is, I'm not going to get there fast, but I'm going to get there regardless. And, especially like Red River, we were out there, which was kind of my first big ride back after I stuffed my wrists up. I spent a lot of time riding at the back at my own pace, which is, really my preference. But I've noticed that some guys treat it like it's a race, in the sense that, like, especially on the Detour, the guys that ride it more often are going to know the trail. so they're going to be faster going through it versus like somebody's never seen it before. And there's been instances where like I've had guys look in the rearview mirror and like prevent me from passing them. I mean, I see it both ways, but
there's very different strategies too. And this is like personal pet peeve, I guess. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but like, it's like the tortoise and the hare story. So for me, I'm kind of the tortoise. I'm like steadily going along the whole time. I don't really take breaks. I'm just trying to get to the end. I know I have a long road ahead with the dual sport. Whereas the really fast guys, they go balls to the wall and then they stop and they take a break and they chill and they have a bunch of banter and like that's cool for them. But then what happens is I'm trucking along and so then I pass them because they're pulled over and then pretty soon they're up my butt again and I have to pull over and then we do this like all day long and I'm like, will you please just stay ahead of me? Like I don't like this game. So that's one of my struggles.
Yeah, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit here, but dual sport is such a subjective term when it comes to motorcycling. It encompasses everything, right? Beginners, hardcore people. So whenever you have that huge mix coming together, especially in an event setting like that, sometimes there's some challenges when it comes to that. But yeah, tell those guys to stop taking breaks.
Just go. Any other like trail etiquette type stuff that you guys can think of? Maybe hit on. One
thing I can think of really quickly, and it's something that we really strive to do here in Fairmont Dual Sport Riders, is leave the place better than you found it. Unfortunately, there in our really good riding areas is also places that people like to play the little 5:30 clubs, so ride for 5 minutes and drink for a half hour and throw cans everywhere. And Trevor can attest to this too, man. We do our best to clean up the trail as we go along, especially if we're stopped taking a break and you look around and you can see just a bunch of trash everywhere. We do our best to pick that stuff up. And we also, as a club, partner with Tread Lightly to pick an area that we like to ride and clean up and have a big club-wide cleanup day.
So, Trevor, you're into moto camping, I heard. Is there an item that you can't leave home without when you go moto camping?
I don't know. Like when I go camping with my wife, we take my Tacoma. I have like a camper shell built out for it that we really like. And, volume and weight aren't really a consideration. We just go to be comfortable, right? When I go moto camping, my setup's pretty stripped down. I'm not sleeping under a tarp necessarily, but I don't take an abundance of stuff. But one thing I always try to take are just some really light shoes to wear around camp. That's probably my biggest luxury item because you ride for a full day, you're sweating in your boots, your feet are probably pretty nasty, and it's really nice to just be able to put some camp shoes on or whatever and kick back and relax. That and a good headlamp, probably my two big must-have items outside of your basics like your sleep setup. And I do have an inflatable mattress that packs down pretty tight, and I'm excited to try a hammock setup. I've got one. I plan to do more moto camping like in the past. Then I broke my wrist, got married, bought a house, had my first year home ownership, and haven't really made it out to go moto camping in quite a while now.
Are you the type to pack food and like cook out, or are you like eating while you're out riding and then just kind of setting up camp for the night later?
I like to cook within reason. If I know that I'm going to pass like a grocery store, I'll plan on getting a steak or something like that and cooking that over the fire. Other than that, I really like freeze-dried meals because they pack down pretty small. If you carry a decent water filter, there are plenty of places to ride past that you can get a hold of water, unlike out west. One would have been 2022, I think. I had a week off between jobs, and I just rode and camped for a week on National Forest, and that was one of my favorite periods of riding, just in general. That was for me true freedom. That was a great experience, but a lot of steaks that week, and more of the cooking outside versus freeze-dried food or, a lot of guys just eat like a pepperoni roll or whatever and call it good.
Which is a very West Virginia thing. So for those that aren't familiar, explain what a pepperoni roll is.
So pepperoni roll was essentially a coal miner's lunch in a way. It is a shelf-stable bread roll with pepperoni and oftentimes cheese in it. And growing up in West Virginia, I just thought it was a normal thing. And then, you know, when I was like 10 years old, I got out from the state for the first time. And it's like, oh, nobody else has these. This is like a regional thing. But man, they're great for riding.
Yeah, when you're in West Virginia, a lot of places just have like homemade pepperoni rolls in the gas station, which you would think might be kind of gnarly, you might want to stay away from. But I mean, they're made with a lot of love down there.
They really are. And like Trevor was saying too, they are regional. And I remember as a kid going to the Vero Beach GNCC in Florida and going into a Shell station, and I'm looking around and I don't see them anywhere. And it was kind of a similar thing, first time that far away from home. And I remember asking the guy at the counter, "Hey, where's your pepperoni rolls at?" "Pepper what? Pepper what?" He kept saying.
He's like, "We got the roller dogs over there."
Yeah, like Lizzie's.
Let's tell people where they can connect with you guys online, follow your podcast, connect with the club.
Yeah, so FDSR, Fairmont Dual Sport Riders, is on Facebook. Look us up there, FDSR. I am one of the group admins, so please fill out the questions. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves about running this club is so many people will just click join and not answer any of the questions. Well, if you don't at least put what you're riding, I'm not letting you in the Dual Sport Club. So find us on there for FDSR. The podcast, we are on YouTube as Tallboys and Trackmasters. We are on Spotify and on Facebook as well. So check us out there. I guess personally, Instagram, Right Cycle Works. You can find me on there. I usually post some cool stuff on there as well.
So I really don't have much social media presence outside of, FDSR and Tallboys and Trackmasters. That's something I've been kind of wanting to expand on for some time. So maybe this will be the year I'll actually start posting up some riding content or something like that for, my personal YouTube page. But for now, I'm pretty much a ghost. So
an enigma. All right. Well, thanks to both of you for joining me, and thanks to everybody for tuning in to Momentum. This has been a production of High Gear Success. If you want to connect or recommend a guest, head to MomentumMotorsportsPodcast.com. Until next time, keep the momentum rolling.